Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology with Henry Seltzer. That's me. And we do want to take a look at the new moon that's coming up right away. And that is something that's very, very interesting in the various aspects that it has in it. So let's take a look at that right away. So you should be able to see the chart. And as usual, we have the chart beginning with Aries and going around the circle because, this is the actual ascendant 26 Sag, but that is for the West Coast. And what I'd like to do is disable the aspects to it because, we can't count on what the rising sign will be wherever it is that you happen to be. So let's go ahead and go to the preferences and time passages, display options, no aspect options. Let's see. Yes, so for this chart only, we'll say no more aspects to that because that makes it easier for us to see what's really going on in this chart. So there's a couple things I'd like to call your attention to. And of course, the first thing to mention is that this is an Aquarius New Moon at 9 degrees of Aquarius. But we also have, of course, Pluto there now at the very first degree of Aquarius. And we have, or the second degree, the 158, almost the third degree. And we have also this conjunction with Mercury, which is at 217. So we have this very close conjunction between Mercury and Pluto in this new moon. And the configuration of the new moon is always important. It brings out, if we were just looking at a random day, we weren't worried about the fact that the sun and moon were together. We just say that's a passing transit. Mercury comes along, it connects with the Pluto and goes on. And it is important for that one day, but it's not important for the whole cycle that this new moon has involved in. So this is a 30-day cycle until the next new moon, which will be at the tail end of February. So that will govern March. But this is, we're getting very close to February. This is the 30-day cycle that will be through most of February. So we want to pay attention to the fact that this is a particularly transformational occurrence to have Mercury there, which brings in the personal planets. We'd want to also see if Pluto connects to anything else. And actually, I'll show you that. In the time passage software, you can do a command click. And that does tell you that it makes aspects. Well, this is an aspect to Haumea, which you may be slightly unfamiliar with. It's the glyph that I'm using is an alternate glyph for Haumea, and this is Maki Maki, and these are new 21st century astronomical discoveries that I've been researching because I did the book on Eris, and that was it turns out Eris is very important in charts, so I figured that these two would be also, because they're declared as actually a kind of planet, dwarf planet, by the astronomers, and it does turn out that they are very significant in chart work also, which is encouraging to me because, basically astrology is a living science. It does incorporate these new astronomical discoveries when they're officially named as planets, at least. So I think this is very interesting. And then what we originally started to look for here was that Pluto does make an aspect. It's a semi-square aspect to Saturn. Also looks like a quintile there. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, sesqui, is that right? Oh, no, that's not right. Okay, let's see. Oh, it's a septile. Okay, so Venus is in a septile, which is a 2-degree septile, so that's not quite as important. And then I guess we're also considering the fact that there is a sextile to this position of Neptune, which is almost in Aries now, and by the way, is conjunct the North Node now. So these are very strong connections. We have a transformational time right now. It's enhanced by these new planets to some extent, which do have to do with a connection to nature and also a connection to natural law. It's a connection to understanding that there is a right way and a wrong way to treat people. As I've discovered through all this research, it's quite amazing. And there is also a right way and a wrong way to consider whether lying for your own advantage against the truth as you know it, just telling a lie. This is what I say is true, but it's not true. I know it's not true. That's not a good idea. So I think we all know these things, but our culture does not enforce those things. It kind of gives permission to lie if you can get away with it. It doesn't have a strong moral code implicit in the culture anymore. It used to be, of course, with the prominence of the Christian religion, the fundamentalist religions of all kinds, of course, Judaism, Muslim, there is a strong moral precept involved. But nowadays, not so much. So I think that's why I think that these are so important right now. These planets that have come along and that do have to do with connection to nature, both Makemake and Haumea, and do have to do with Haumea, not so much of an activist role, but an observational role, a participation role in the sense of enjoying being in nature, having that attitude of, no, I have to tell the truth. I can't, it's not okay to lie. It's not okay also to treat people unfairly. I want to be treated fairly by others. I want to do that myself because that would be what makes sense, so it kind of makes a natural sense in a way. So these are very important new archetypes that are coming along. I apologize for taking so long to talk about them, but I do think they're important, and they are prominent in the lunations that are coming up in this next cycle initiated by this new moon. So just to go back to, we'll go back on single planet and take it away. And then the other thing that's very striking in this configuration, you can see with the big thick blue lines, which means they're quite close, the aspects, we have between Sun and Moon at almost 10 degrees of Aquarius, but we have a grand trine with Jupiter, which is retrograde, about to station direct next month, early next month, and with Makemake. So there's really a lot of these new planetary energies that I've been researching and that many astrologers are not working with yet. So it's kind of an opportunity, isn't it, for us to just pay attention and observe on these days that are prominent, which the lunations are more prominent. So we have this one at the end of January, and then we have another lunation coming up. The first quarter moon is the 5th of February. Then we have the full moon on the 12th. And then we have the last quarter moon, which is about a week later on the 20th. So these are lunations that are coming up, phases in the lunation cycle. And to me, it's quite interesting to see how these new planets are also involved in those. So I want to show you that before we get off of the topic of what this new moon portends and what this new moon cycle portends moving forward. So with Mercury and Pluto, one thing is we do say that the Mercury, which represents our mental faculties, does go to depth right now, does go to getting to the details, getting to the bottom of things, at the emotional depths. There could be, dogmatic arguments. Actually, you could be sure of your own point of view, and there could be power struggles over that. As far as Mercury, you also might want to look at where Aquarius is in your chart. You do want to look, because that would be the area of the chart that is really emphasized at this time, not only emphasized by the new moon, which brings it forward, it's like a fresh start in that area, but it's also emphasized by this presence of Pluto, transformation. We would expect that area to be the subject of evolutionary pressure, perhaps power struggles, all the things that Pluto is involved with, including looking within our hearts, going to the depths of things. So these are all prominent right now. The fact that the new moon is also in this trine with Jupiter, about to station, so going slowly. This is actually a very strong new moon just from that. We would expect that wherever Gemini is in your chart is also getting a lot of juice right now as well. Expansive. Jupiter relates to expansion of all things, optimism, future orientation, beliefs, the things that Jupiter represents. So all of these, including, of course, Makemake, having to do with, as I say, not only connection to nature and a real ability to appreciate nature in all ways, appreciate that we're part of this earth, that we're part of the whole structure of life, the biosphere, we're all connected to it. And as an activist or understanding, in other words, if things aren't going right, if there is a tendency that we see to trash the environment or to deny climate change is happening, I think that's an important thing for this era. So this is a time, this next cycle, February, including, the very last couple days of also January, that this we might see this come to the fore. We might see there's cause for activism because the environmental things are kind of under attack in this new American administration. Says he doesn't believe in climate change and just wants to drill for oil, drill. And that may not be the best move for the climate or the environment, either one, or the local environment where, fracking is also very dangerous. So, these are things that we may see discussed coming up. We may see some passion expressed by people that are feeling strongly about protecting the earth. That may be something we see coming up. So let's see. Oh, there's one other thing that I wanted to mention, which is kind of interesting as well. In this new moon, we can see that there is a close quintile, I believe, alignment. And if I put the mouse, we see Sun is quintile forming 2.6 degrees with Eris and also with Chiron, only it's 2.4. And then it's fading with 2.4. So what I get out of that is that the actual quintile could be pretty close to the midpoint of Chiron and Eris. Why do I say that? Because it's 2.4 on either side of it. So what I can do to prove that out is I can take a look at the midpoints. So in the Time Passages software, we do a midpoint report on each chart that we can get. And that tells us that with Chiron, when we're looking at Chiron Eris, we do have 2155, or just about 22 degrees of Aries, you see. So that's the point where, and then, this is about 10, and a quintile is 72 degrees. So if we add 12 to 10, we get 22, and then 60 degrees carries us over from Aquarius into Aries. So just to say, this is a very, very close quintile, not so much, it's 2 degrees off when you look at either one of these items, the Chiron at 19 and a half of Aries, and the Eris is at 24 and a half. But the midpoint is 22, so 2.5 degrees added. So that means that we are talking about a very close quintile to the midpoint of Chiron and Eris, which brings up another factor in this chart of, recognizing inner wounding. What does Chiron tell us? It tells us that there are areas within our chart, areas within, therefore, our psyche, that have to do with inner wounding that took place. If you look in your own chart where Chiron is with one of the personal planets, you'll see, with the Sun, it's a father wound, with the Moon, it's a mother wound, with Mercury, it's a wound to the estimation of your own mental powers. You doubt yourself in the way you can speak up and articulate what you want to say. And with Venus, it's relationships. So that all these things with Mars, it also has a factor. There it's aggression. You're either afraid that you might be too aggressive and hurt somebody, or you're afraid also that somebody might hurt you because of the Mars being, violent, potentially violent. So anyway, I just wanted to say that bringing Chiron out in this way is another factor in this whole thing. And since we're enjoined to look within with strong Pluto, it's also an opportunity to do that, to recognize, these things are like what Jung called a complex, something deep within the psyche that we're not always conscious of, and becoming more conscious of where we were perhaps, traumatized in the past and early childhood, leading to this hidden area of a wounded place. It's so important because in many cases it interrupts the flow of what we're trying to accomplish when we don't acknowledge these places where we have issues of self-worth and so on. So it is important in general, and it's important in this cycle that we look to that and we try to understand other people from that standpoint. When we see other people reacting, sometimes they're not really angry with us. They think they are, but it's something that they're carrying inside themselves. I have a friend that says, you're never angry for the reason that you think you are. And this is the case, that you can look inside, you can see by paying loving attention, by focusing a little bit on that part of yourself, you can kind of see where maybe you're hung up a little bit, or you can better understand yourself and have a little bit more compassion for yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't say, "Oh, that's terrible, I did that." Say, "Well, why did I do that? Oh, there's that thing coming up again." And just being aware of it, not so much having to take action immediately, but just to be more aware of what's going on inside you. Very important and coming up in this cycle. So I do want to show you these future lunations because I think it's quite interesting to see these interplanet things coming up. So I mentioned this grand trine, and it gets even more specific on February 3rd, because at that point Mercury will also be at 11 degrees. The moon will be beyond that, of course. But Mercury at 11 degrees will be a factor in the same grand trine on the 3rd. On the 4th, we have the station of Jupiter will be stationing to direct motion, so very standstill in the sky. So the week of February 3rd is pretty wild because it includes also the February 5th first quarter moon. And I didn't bring that chart along, actually. I didn't want to crowd things too much, so I don't have the chart to show you, but the 3rd, 4th, and 5th is pretty dramatic in the next month. And then we also have the full moon, which I did bring the chart. So in the full moon chart, the interesting thing is that the sun and moon are at 24 degrees of Aquarius and of Leo, therefore making a T-square look to Uranus. So this brings up the Uranus in Taurus very directly and prominently. And of course, we know it was at the last new moon also, but it was a sextile and trine. But it does bring up this idea that there's a lot of surprises. We might be startled by what the surprises are that come to us. There can be new information depending on where Taurus lies, or where 23 Taurus lies in your chart. You may look to that, see how it aspects your own planets, or see what house it's in, and that's an area that might be up for surprising events, unexpected revelations, having to do with this deep intuition that Uranus does represent. So just to be aware that when that full moon comes up at 12 degrees, I'm sorry, not 12 degrees, on the 12th of February, that is very, very strong connection to Uranus, and not only to Uranus, because what we have also at 24 Aries is we have the presence of Uranus. So this is a sextile and a trine to the full moon, and it does, connote that there is a certain amount of validity to recognizing where Aries lies, perhaps where it connects to your planets by transit, that this is a strong, it's a feminine warrior, doesn't take prisoners, very dramatically, you can have a bulldozer effect, only when it refers to deep purpose. So it's really all about finding what it is that your bottom line, what it is that you absolutely stand for, and you don't stand for anything. You don't stand for anything getting in the way of it. So when you discover that about yourself, it's kind of bringing purpose to your life, meaningful connection to your life, whatever house it's in. I recommend the Time Passages interpretations for that I wound up doing when I did that book, The 10th Planet. I'll show you just one about the first house, that all of these are good. Very good. And so it does tell you something about how that is for you. You might want to check that out if you have the chance to. And remembering that in this full moon, this Eris is featured. So the funny thing is that these new planets of Haumea, Makemake, and Eris are very much featured in this next cycle. It kind of gives us an opportunity to check them out. Because, it's hard to just take my word for it, that they do have to do with depth, going to depth within the psyche. They do have to do with these kind of natural feelings of what's right, what's not right, standing up for your own truth, finding your own purpose and standing for that, which is Eris. So just, see how it strikes you when this middle of the month, February 12th, comes along, which will also affect the following couple of weeks. And just to indicate one more of those, is also the last quarter moon. If we look at that configuration, going by this real strong timing of 9:30 in the morning on February 20th, we have 2 degrees Pisces, 19, 2 degrees Sag, 20 minutes. So this is another part of the lunation cycle, the last quarter moon, what Dane Rudhyar called a crisis of consciousness. So it is something to pay attention to. And it's also the sun at 2 degrees of Pisces, the moon at 2 degrees of Sag, Pluto at 2 degrees of Aquarius, and Haumea square at 3 degrees of Scorpio. So this is another time when, this really emphasizes the Pluto Haumea. It is the 20th. It is exactly 30 days after the inauguration of Donald Trump. And this may be a time when I've been discovering, as I look through the events, the events of the past year, does seem, when the Pluto Haumea square is highlighted, I do see over and over again people getting caught up in the lies. One of the big events there was the settlement in the Dominion voting machines lawsuit, where they almost $1 billion, because they were knowingly lying about the machines breaking down and having the election results be off. So, this is, very important stuff, I think, in our politics and our local thing, just to see what's happening, that there's such a thing as this new administration coming in and their policies, and that may be to the good. It's good to shake things up. But on the other hand, it's not so good to lie. Getting caught in the lie is kind of important. We may see that coming up. Just to tell you, that's my Henry Seltzer prediction for February 20th time frame. We may see those lies coming to light. So just covering that a little bit while we talk about, in general, where the new moon is at. That's coming up, that is really the February cycle. And it's a powerful new moon. I think we should all just pay attention to that we do have these strong inner connections to ourselves at deep levels. We have also Mars is slowing down to station next month also. It's moving backwards. It gets to about 17 degrees of Cancer before it stations direct. And so it's very close to that. So it's moving more slowly. And by the way, there's also Saturn at 17. Now it's at 17. I think it moves a little bit more, but further. But that Mars-Saturn trine with Mars slowing down is also strong, which means kind of things coming to a stop. So things on the outer world coming to slow down and not move fast, and we have to just take our time and go slow. We're having lessons there. And then the inner work is so important, and that is what we're enjoined to do, to understand ourselves better at these deeper levels of the psyche and try to understand what the purpose of all of this is. Let me transition back. But just to say that really there's a purpose to all of this, that the universe does in fact have our back, that everything comes along for a reason, and everything that comes to our life and influences us, there's a reason. And, we really benefit when we can have that point of view and not take things so hard, and really just try to see the bright side and try to do the best we can. All that we can do is do the best we can. And we just have to, take it from one step at a time, take it from here, take it from where we're at, take it from where the world is at, and just try to have that faith in the universe and ourselves to get through. So best of luck with that. See you in a couple of weeks. Take care.